It's your boy Chad Sommer here on Rock Bottoms Up Podcast, the podcast that shines a light on the tough journey of addiction recovery. Today, we're talking about the often hidden struggles people face on this path. These challenges affect millions, but there is hope. Through powerful stories from those who have faced these battles and won, we aim to inspire and give you the tools to overcome. Each episode, we bring you real-life stories and expert advice to help you understand and support recovery. So whether you're on your own recovery journey, supporting a loved one, or just want to learn more, you're in the right place. Let's break the chains together. Welcome to Rock Bottoms Up, you guys. Let's get this party started. I'm so excited to introduce a good friend of mine, somebody who I grew up with, somebody I graduated high school with. This is Jade Bills. Jade, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely, brother. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Jade, and he'll just go ahead and introduce himself and give a little introduction on his life and what he does for a living right now.
Outstanding, Chad. Thank you for that introduction. In fact, we grew up together.
Yeah.
Like since I was a tiny boy, I don't ever remember a time not knowing you.
Yeah.
So we grew up in the same church. We grew up in the same neighbor area.
Yeah.
And went to school together. And I still remember your belly dancing. And
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's well known. It's inseared into a lot of people. They can't wash that out.
Forget it.
No, I've had people go through therapy. They can't get rid of that. They just have to learn to deal with it.
It's been a great growing up years, and I really appreciate the friendship we have together. And I'm glad to be able to connect with you here, and we still don't live that far apart.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how the world just works, isn't
One
it?
little step at a time.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, we both kind of went on our own, little paths, and then
here we are back,
here
right?
we are.
Can't
Here we
get
are.
away from home.
Almost the same town. No, that's great. So why don't you go just take it from there, growing up as a kid and maybe just give us a little insight on who Jade is and what choices brought him to where he is right now.
I love it, Chad. So I grew up in Sugar City, Idaho. Tiny little town that's a beautiful area. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before with some of the other people. Yeah. And just, it's one of those communities that I don't think there's a better place you could be. Yeah. It's one of those places when we grew up, like, drugs, alcohol, it almost was non-existent.
Yeah.
Like there was some, but you didn't see it much. You didn't hear about it. It wasn't talked about in the school halls. Right. It was a beautiful little haven that we grew up in.
Yeah.
And I feel completely blessed for that because it really never was a temptation in my life.
Right.
Like the friends I hung out with, including yourself, never had that temptation, never had kids come up and say, hey, you want a hit of this? Hey, you want to puff one of these? Hey, how come you're not doing this? This is what we never suffered.
Yeah. Yeah,
I can't imagine how that has changed over the years. And even in the schools, the same school that we went to 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, it's changed a lot. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that today because my job, I'm working at the Sugar Salem School still. Yeah. So I see problems that maybe I didn't see that were there before.
Right.
And maybe they were there and I just wasn't aware, but as far as I know, they were pretty non-existent.
Yeah. No, I mean, it wasn't in your face.
It wasn't.
Like you talked about schools nowadays, like kids are seeing it in the hallways. Kids are getting positioned in the hallways.
Absolutely.
And, growing up from Sugar, there was stuff going behind closed doors, but it wasn't in your face. It wasn't.
You had to go out to the parking lot at lunch.
Yeah, no, you really had to
know where to go.
Yeah, you really had to find your avenues because the community that we grew up in, it just kind of was that influence. And so if there was something that, was going on that went against, community, how would you say, just the way the community lived and operated. If you went against it, you stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yep.
Like a sore thumb. And nobody wants to stick out like a sore thumb. And
No.
so, yeah, it was a great place to, grow up.
Grow up and be. And so I grew up, I was the youngest of 5 children.
Yeah.
And had parents that took me to church every Sunday. Grew up in a very religious background.
Yeah.
With the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
Very predominant in the area.
Right.
And everybody, like I said, we knew pretty much everybody in the community. It was such a small community that you knew everyone.
Yeah.
And you knew that it was safe to go ride my bike around. It was safe to go hang out with my friends. It was safe to go, and that was the norm.
Yep.
It was a wonderful place.
Yeah.
Grew up there. I ended up going to college and graduating with a bachelor degree in teaching.
Oh, wow.
And I actually went back to Sugar Salem and student taught there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and taught with some of the same teachers that had taught me. So, and, after graduating and going through college, I decided that I didn't want to go directly into teaching. That wasn't the avenue that I took. And so I went into sales and made a lot of money and did good in sales.
That's
and
right.
It was
That's right. I forgot about that, Jade.
And I enjoyed that. Well, I did that job. I shouldn't say I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I did that job for about 12 years altogether.
Wow.
Changing around into a couple different sales avenues, but doing sales. And after some time, an opportunity came to look for another job. And it was a good thing because I was burned out. I kind of dreaded that going to work every single day and just being like, oh, I got to get up again. I got to go to work again. I'm like, this is not like the way I want to live life.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to enjoy and do something that I feel like, 1, makes a difference.
Right.
And 2, that I'm excited to get up and go out to work.
Right.
Like, I'm not like dragging feet, right? I think that's something we all can relate to at times. So
absolutely, the mundane things of life. Yeah, no, the repetitive life. So as Jade had mentioned, it's funny that you went to school, you student taught at Sugar. And this is I'm just going to kind of walk you through this. So you talked about sales, which is funny too, because when I moved back to the area, we met back up at Quest.
That's right. That we did.
Yeah, so Quest was a phone company here in the local area, and Jade was my supervisor. So we met there. Met back up again there. And then, like you said, you chose a couple sales things, but what you're doing today is he's back in, where he's student taught, where we graduated. He's now a resource officer for the school. But so you were just talking about how boring and I got to get up. Jade went on the different spectrum of boring as far as jobs go. There's nothing about being a police officer that is boring, unless you're probably parked and looking for a speeder. Maybe that then gets a little
Even
boring.
then, no.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. So you went like completely opposite of boring. As you were in sales, what kind of led you to that choice to get into policing?
There's a lot of different things in my life that led up to that point, but probably one of the most influential things towards that decision that I made was I have 6 kids now. So I got married, had 6 children, 1 daughter and 5 boys. We would often go swimming in Idaho Falls. It's an Apple. There's a center down there, kind of a fitness sports center, and we bought a membership there and would go swimming with the kids and go sit in the hot tub. And one day we were swimming in one of the pools there, and I saw one of my friends from high school. And I turned around and I was talking to him for a couple minutes. My older kids would jump off the edge and grab onto like the pool's only like 4 feet deep. It's a pretty shallow pool. Yeah. But my kids would jump off the edge, grab onto the little styrofoam noodle, and laugh and swim to the edge with the noodle and jump and do it again. Over and over and over. Yeah. And so I turned around and was talking to my friend, And after a couple minutes of talking, I turn around to check on my kids, and I don't see my son Jaden.
Oh, jeez.
He was, at the time, he was probably about 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so I asked my daughter and my son, I'm like, hey, have you guys seen Jaden? Like, where is he? And they're like, I don't know. But there's somebody underneath there, Dad.
Oh, my God.
And I looked down in the pool, and there was a little body laying down on the bottom of the pool.
Oh, my gosh.
And that, I'm just going to tell you, was one of the scariest moments in my life.
Oh, I bet.
I went over, I swam down as quick as I could and grabbed the body, and it was literally just limp.
Oh, man.
I've never felt that feeling in my life before, and it just felt lifeless.
Wow.
And I ran, I swam him over to the side of the pool and set him up on his side, and all of the thoughts of the days of going to Boy Scouts and doing the CPR on the dummies and putting them into the different positions on how to help them recover kind of flooded my mind.
Wow.
And I had another kid on the other side that says, hey, I'm trained in CPR. Can I help? And for whatever reason, I'm going to tell you, I think the Spirit really talked to me and said, and I said, I've got it, but call the police, right? Call 911. And so I put him up on his side, and I put him in a little recovery position is what it's called.
Right.
And I didn't follow what I was exactly trained in CPR, but I gave him a couple puffs of air in his mouth. Yeah. And after about 5 seconds, all this water started just gushing out of his mouth. Wow. Because he was on his side, it was just able to come out freely instead of out on his back, where normally if you're going to do CPR.
Right.
And like I said, I really feel like the Lord guided me to know how to help him.
Yeah.
And just that experience alone, being able to handle that situation, it was a terrifying situation. But being able to help and work through that and manage that situation and have a successful outcome.
Yeah.
And my son today, he's at national speech and just took 3rd place in the nation.
Oh, praise God.
So that, because of that incident, that was one of the things that really led me to saying, I want to do something that I can truly help people who are in moments of despair.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, not awesome, but the outcome, obviously, as a father's father, I mean, praise God.
Yeah.
But, to be able to, witness one of these God-given talents, because there's not a lot of people that respond in emergency situations very good. In fact, they make it worse than they make it better. And as you probably have seen, but, given, it's funny how God works sometimes, but given that opportunity where, here's this life and death situation, that traumatic situation that happened. But obviously, praise God, son turned out okay. But in that act, you were able to, see and realize some of these God-given talents that He's given you, and the fact that you acted on that. That's really awesome, Jay. That's really cool. I didn't know that story before.
Well, it truly was a miracle, and honestly, Chad, it was more like I was just instruments in God's hands. Wasn't talent of my own. Yeah. It was following what God gave me to do. So.
Yeah, praise God. So from there, you given an impression. Walk us through the steps that you took to come into policing, because maybe there's a few people out there that might be looking into policing.
So I will tell you, that was a little bit of a hard journey at that point, because I decided, yes, I need to look for something that I want that's going to fulfill that need, that passion that I have within me to help others.
Right.
And police officer was naturally the avenue that was most enlightened to me, the one that looked like, that's what I want to do. And so I applied with Idaho, with ISP Police Department. And I went through their whole training, their whole background process, their whole interview process. Yeah. They had polygraph tests. They had all of these different things, psychological tests to say, are you capable of being able to do this? Because it does take a certain type to be able to do this job.
Stress.
They ended up coming back and saying, well, we had 25 people qualify and only had 22 positions. So you didn't make the cut.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a little bit discouraging for me. Yeah. But then they said, but we really liked you. And we have another opening that's going to open up right now. So we want you to apply for it again.
Oh, wow.
I said, okay.
Wow.
And at the same time, I said, well, Utah has openings too.
Yeah.
And at this point, I had a house in Rigby. I built a house, and we were settled in Rigby, and that was where we wanted to be the rest of our life.
Right.
But now that we had a job opportunity, we said, well, let's apply for Utah too. So I applied for Idaho again, and I applied for Utah again, and I went through the same process with both agencies.
Yeah.
And Idaho came back and said the same thing a second time to me. And the same day, or actually, I'm sorry, it was the next day, Utah called and said, hey, we have a position that we want to offer you.
Yeah.
So we took the position in Utah, and we moved my family out to Utah. We actually did a rent to own on our home.
Oh, wow.
And we moved to Utah and started my career as a highway patrol trooper in the state of Utah.
Right. Right.
I worked there for 6 years. I switched between Vernal, Utah, and then I moved over to Box Elder County, Tremonton, and lived there for 4 years.
Okay.
And worked in highway patrol. Loved my job.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved every day of it.
Yeah.
I had no complaints. It was one of those jobs where I was excited to get up and go to work. If I was offered more hours, I would go and work more hours because I loved it.
Yeah.
It was a job that I just thrived on.
Right.
However, my house that was doing the rent to own fell through.
Oh, no.
And the people that had been renting it weren't able to purchase it.
Oh, no.
And so we had an option. We said, well, we could look at moving back to Idaho and move back to our house. That's where our dream house is. We've been renting for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
Or we could stay here. You know, I love the job.
Yeah.
And so we, as a family, we made that decision, and we decided to all pray and fast about it.
Yeah.
And my kids all prayed and all fasted, and they all felt inspired that we were supposed to come back. And I sat there dragging my feet. I said, whoa, 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 I've got a job that I love.
Yeah.
I've got a job that pays. I don't have a job in Idaho.
Right.
But, like, what are we, like, why? Like, are you sure?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Until we could revisit this.
after dragging my feet for about 6 months, I ended up staying while my family moved back I stayed working in Utah, and I'd drive back on the weekends. And after 6 months and doing a 360 on the road down to Utah to work one day, I said, okay, we're done. I'm moving back to Idaho with you, and I'm going to find another job.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was able to come on and work for Madison County, which is where I'm at now, as the sheriff's office. And I did patrol with them for several years, and now I just got moved over about a year ago to working in the schools.
Oh,
the
cool.
same school that I student taught in, the same school that I went to school in, and now I'm there being a school resource officer.
And now you're back as a resource officer. That's got to be, I don't know, like a gift and a curse. I don't know, maybe it's just an all-around good thing. Obviously, you talk about what a great place it was. Why don't you, coming from the perspective of being a resource officer, now you're kind of looking at this school, this area, probably in a different light now. Being the fact that, you're getting to know your community and you're getting to know, the kids in the school. How has it been, adjusting from that perspective into, now here you are a resource officer?
It's really a completely different perspective to take as a school resource officer in law enforcement. My job is I see the worst out there every day.
Yeah.
Like every day I interact with somebody, it's that person's probably one of their worst days in their life.
Yeah.
Whether that means they had a DUI, whether that means they lost a loved one, whether that means it was a suicide there. Like, these are the calls I respond to.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I see in these people's lives. And so it's not something they look forward to whenever they interact with me on a normal basis, right?
Right.
Now, taking it from the school perspective, I'm seeing these kids whose lives often come from these broken backgrounds. These kids whose lives are, because again, I interact with all of the kids at school, and it's a lot of positive interactions, but a lot of the troubled kids are the ones I spend a little bit of my time with on there. These are the kids who, I have a girl in one of my classes who, she grew up in a home where alcohol and marijuana were just as common as drinking milk.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how common it was. She said, I started smoking when I was 10 because my brother gave it to me, and now my mom gives it to me.
Wow.
Like, that's just the normal.
Yeah.
And she's like, what's wrong with it?
Doesn't know any different.
No idea I mean anything different.
Mm.
And these are kids of the kids that I went to school with.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of the working in the same school I grew up in. I see a lot of the parents that I went to school with, and now I see a lot of their kids.
Yeah.
And so it is really disheartening at times,
Right.
just to see some of the struggles of those life choices that people made.
Right.
And sometimes it's those littlest tiny choices that people make of just everyday choices.
Yeah.
And they make a little choice that takes them in one path,
Yeah.
and you see another kid who takes them in a completely different path.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think it'd be that big of a deal of a choice.
Right.
But those tiny little choices, small little choices, take you on a path that diverges. And now all of a sudden, these kids. So one of the things I've really learned a lot in working with youth is my brain as a youth doesn't develop all the way until I'm 25 years old.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you think about an adult, let's say you drink alcohol in your home. You're an adult, you're legal to drink alcohol, you can do that all day long.
Yeah.
But you got kids who see you doing that every single day of your life.
Right.
What does that kid think?
Right. Yeah.
Does that kid think anything different?
Nope.
Like, for them to process, well, mom can drink it, why can't I drink it?
Right.
Their brain's still in that developmental stage. You might be over that 25 years old, and you might be like, I'm done growing, right?
Right.
I can manage myself. I know what to do. If I get drunk, I know I shouldn't go out and drive, or whatever it might be, that choice you make. That child of yours who says, hey, mom drinks this and she has a good time, or dad drinks this, right?
Yeah.
They go and get this alcohol and show it to their friends and drink it. Yeah. Their brains do not have that knowledge or that growth potential that we've already done.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because I don't think we realize that, because we get caught up in our everyday life, we don't really realize that we're examples and that our kids are sponges. And when they're at that age, they only know what they know. And they're still in the process of seeing and doing, tasting, touching, hearing, seeing. And their experience is coming from what they see and perceive. And so that's their education is until they get into school and start going through the general education. Their education usually comes from the people that bring them up, grandparents, parents, siblings, whatever the case may be, foster home, whatever the case may be. Their only education is what they're witnessing and perceiving. And so, like you said, in a home that, has alcohol, if the parents don't take it upon themselves to explain alcohol, alcohol is a poison. Whether you like it tastes good or whatever it does for you, as far as what it does in your body, the way it's processed, the way the liver works, your body tries to get rid of it as fast as possible because it is a poison and it does damage to your liver. That's just general information.
Science,
Yeah, that's just the facts. And so, if you don't take it upon yourself to teach your children, and as a kid, like, can you imagine your parent coming up to you and being like, hey, listen, I drink alcohol, it's a poison, it's going to affect it's going to affect and stunt your growth during the periods of, 0 to 25. How dumb does that sound to your child? Probably sounds pretty stupid. But yet we have to have these conversations with our kids, because if we don't, then we're allowing those kids to get their education from A, B, and C. And if it's not for you, and if you're not taking the responsibility to do that, then guess who they're going to? They're going to their friend.
100%.
They're going to the internet, where you're giving that chance away to really direct and help educate your child. But yeah, no, it really is monkey see, monkey do. And so that's where we need to take it upon ourselves, that responsibility to our children to, teach and educate them. Because if we're not doing that, where they, get that, you're leaving it up to chance. And
the sad thing is, like, I see some of these kids, they'll bring alcohol. They'll bring a water container, right? They'll fill it with the alcohol. Then they'll bring it to school.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, here, do you want a sip of my drink?
Oh,
and sometimes these kids don't even know what they're
realize
getting.
It.
And they're being offered alcohol and getting into these substances because, and where do these kids get it from?
Yeah. I mean, obviously someone close, right?
Well, they can't buy it, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting these from houses, their homes.
Yeah.
And
probably generally speaking. Yeah, generally speaking. Unless I know, if I know a friend, but that friend's brother, that friend's brother, or a sister, those are those avenues. But again, you are seeing that. And how, I mean, if you were to put, like, in the small town in Sugar City, how big of a problem is drug and alcohol in that school?
So in my job, right, one of the things that I deal with is 95% of the people, I would say, are really amazing people.
Yeah.
Great community citizens on there.
Right.
But my interaction deals with more of that 5% people, and that's who I end up dealing with a good majority of the time. I went to an event, there was a church parking lot, and I was driving by, working on duty, of course, one night, and I saw a bunch of cars parked over there.
Yeah.
So I stopped in, and a bunch of kids, high school kids, had gathered together because there was going to be a fight.
Oh, brother.
And so, apparently they all came for the show.
Yeah.
And so as I got to talking to some of the cars there and talking to the kids, I started noticing some alcohol in some of the cars. Mm. And we ended up searching probably about 5. There's probably 15 cars there. We ended up searching 5 of the cars that were packed full with 6 kids in each car. And there were, some of those cars had well over 150 containers of alcohol in there.
What? Wow.
Like, absolutely insane. In that one instance, I think there was about 20 kids that got cited for underage possession or consumption of alcohol.
Wow.
And if you think about that, like, this is coming from a small little town of about 1,000 people, right?
Right.
Well, what do we got in Sugar? Maybe a couple thousand.
13.
So not a lot of people,
right?
It's
not huge.
But that's all from this one incident, and that's what the reality of it is now.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, we often say, oh, our community's great, right? It's not a problem in our community.
Right.
It's not something there.
Right.
Seeing this side of it now that I've worked in law enforcement and seeing what's out there, like, I can just tell you, it's in every community out there.
Right.
Like, there is not a single community that is void of the problems of drug, alcohol, and addiction.
Yeah.
Like, it is absolutely available. A stat I heard yesterday in one of my trainings is 4 years ago in the Arizona border area, they seized 0 fentanyl pills.
What?
0 fentanyl pills.
Wow.
2018. 2022, it was like 15 billion fentanyl pills.
That's crazy.
That's that growth and that what's going on.
That's insane.
It's absolutely insane how much. And fentanyls, that's one of the worst drugs out there now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's one where if I've had officers who have breathed it in or touched it, and they end up in the hospital and having to be Narcaned.
Wow.
Just by that physical contact or breathing it in. So when we test for those drugs, like, we have to mask up, wear gloves, just to even touch anything on there because it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
And yet people are out there using it daily.
Daily. Yeah.
In our area.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy how available it is.
Accessible. Yeah, it has become really accessible.
The other crazy thing with that is it's now being laced into every single drug out there.
Oh, no.
Meaning your marijuana, I've had it laced with fentanyl.
Wow.
Your methamphetamine, your heroin. So just to give you an idea, fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin.
Yeah.
and it's being laced into those drugs. Why is it being laced into there?
Yeah.
Because it's more addictive.
Yeah.
It makes you want it more. If it doesn't kill you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
7 out of 10 pills now of fentanyl pills contain a lethal dose.
Wow.
So if you happen to get one of those 7 out of 10, like, it's going to kill you.
Wow.
If you, like, that's just crazy.
Oh, that blows
Yet
my mind,
people
Jake.
use it.
Yeah, that
all
blows
the time.
my mind, Jake.
You get these prescription pills. A lot of times, I mean, you've talked about on your podcast,
Yeah.
a lot of these addictions come from your prescription pills, right? I got a shoulder surgery,
Right.
started taking this prescription, this Oxycontin, oxycodone,
Right.
and all of a sudden, like, I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
Like, it's something, it is real. Like,
Yeah.
addictions aren't something you can just say stop and I'm done, right? It's not. You know that. Everybody on this podcast knows that a lot better than I do because you've gone through those.
Right. Right.
But it is something that goes back to what we talked about. It's those little choices that we make, right?
Right.
And is that choice, I understand, addiction, it's something that leads up to where you're at today, right?
Right. Right.
What choices did we make? Was it that choice to, well, I ran out of Oxycontin, so I went and bought one off of the market?
Right.
And then was it, now I got one with fentanyl and I died and had an OD, right?
Right.
Or did I take 10 Oxycontin and I OD'd, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot.
Mm-mm.
Those pills are so powerful.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the life I see. Those are the situations I go into people's homes, and I've had a dad doing CPR on a kid, on his son,
Oh, man.
20-year-old son on the side of the bed. The guy, Ben, was blue and had the blood pool already. Like, he'd been dead for hours, but
Oh, man.
but these families don't want to lose hope.
Yeah.
They don't want to, they want any grasp of hope that they can have.
Right.
It is not that person's time to die.
Right. Right.
But something took that life away from them. And that's the saddest thing to see, Chad.
Yeah.
Seeing lives taken away,
Mm.
seeing families broken up,
Yeah.
talking to these kids in my school who don't even have parents. Some of them don't even have parents. And if they have parents, they're like, one of the kids is like, oh yeah, my dad's a drug dealer. Like,
Oh, jeez.
the other kid I talk to all the time, he says, oh, my dad's been in and out of jail so many times, I can't tell you how many times. He's like, oh, my dad's home for the weekend, he'll be back in jail tomorrow. Like, that's the life
Mm.
that these children
Yeah.
go through.
Yeah.
And it is scary.
Yeah.
It's a scary world because of how addicting these addictions can be.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's that part of addiction is once you get involved in addiction, as you've seen it dictates your life. It narrows opportunity. I mean, it really takes away a lot of your meaningful, purposeful life. And then, unfortunately, like you said, what happens is that these kids are recipients of their parents' decision.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that kind of rolls downhill, and like, praise God, like, my kids watched, luckily they weren't with me too much. I hate to say that, but luckily, praise God, their mom was in a good place to kind of teach them right for wrong, and they didn't take after their dad. Like, they didn't have to go down that route because a different life was provided for them. A stable life. A lot of these kids don't get that opportunity.
They don't.
A lot of these kids, they really grow up with worst case scenarios. So we're probably speaking to a lot of those parents out there who, whether they're on drugs or not, and they have these kids. You really got to be careful on, you think that you're being sneaky. You think that you're hiding things, but I don't think what you take into consideration is how you react after you use. Because there's a certain mom and dad they deal with, and then mom and dad gets irritated or agitated, and then they use and they get a whole different personality. And they witness that. Like, human behavior is something you can study. It's just like a child growing up in an abusive home. They knew how to and when to react with mom and dad because of what they learned. And it's the same with drugs and alcohol. Mom and dad are happy one minute, they're angry in a second. they know something is going on, whether they see it or are able to, perceive it. They know what's going on. Like they have that intuition, and so just keep that in mind. Like obviously here on the show we promote recovery, we promote sobriety. Why? So we don't have to see the worst case scenario play itself out. As Jade said, a father having to do CPR on his son. Worst case scenario.
One thing I would really recommend to everybody out there, go onto YouTube and there's a video, Dead on Arrival.
Right.
Absolutely phenomenal video that's put together about the dangers of fentanyl from real families, from homes that have lost a 14-year-old daughter, from homes that have lost their children because of this. And it's very well put together. And I just, like, the dangers are out there. We've got to be the examples. We've got to be the ones that step up and say, no, this is not the life I want for my children. And this is not what I want my children to see. Another stat, I don't have the exact numbers on there, but if a family member commits suicide, it is much more likely for another family member.
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
It's like pretty staggering.
But it is
it's almost like
number.
50%.
It's an amazing number.
Yeah, it's staggering.
That is, and you take your own life.
Yeah.
And you think that nobody cares.
Yeah.
You think that nobody out there is watching or is going to worry about you or even cares about you. And so you get to this desperate moment, and it may be because of addiction, it may be because of mental illness, it may be because of whatever circumstance, but that's going to affect your family for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
And your family's family. Like, it is something that it hangs in that family, unfortunately. It truly does.
Yeah. And
so I had one of the girls in my class. She told me the other day, she said, I never expected to make it to my 18th birthday.
Wow.
That's the mentality of these children. She had never even fathomed graduating high school, had never even fathomed being an adult.
Wow.
It never even occurred to her she would ever make it that far. She thought she would be dead before that, because she had seen things in her family that were broken home.
Yeah. No, I mean, it just, your heart goes out to, those kids, growing up like that, these circumstances and what they're being raised in and how they're living, that, that environment is so toxic that, these kids don't even feel like the way things are going, there's any hope. It just really, truly breaks your heart.
You said something there, Chad. You said that there really isn't any hope. I just want you to know, and everybody on this podcast that's listening, there is hope. There really, truly is hope. My job as an SRO in the school, it has been one of the most extraordinary positions that I've ever held, because of the influence, but not just influence, because of the hope that I provide to some of these kids.
Yeah.
They truly see somebody who alcohol hasn't influenced their life, where drugs hasn't influenced their life. They see somebody who has a stable background. They see somebody who supports and loves family. They see somebody who is genuinely an example out there. I don't promote myself in any way. I'm not a perfect person.
Yeah.
But to these children, to these people who have no background, like, be that person of hope.
Yeah.
Be that person of stability. Be that person who they can look up to and say, I can do this.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Right.
I want to be able to get to this type of a life. Right. It can happen.
Yeah.
Be that inspiration for them. If you know somebody who's in a broken home, be there for them.
Yeah.
Reach out to them. Love them. Yeah. That's all these kids look for. Mm-hmm. That's all any of us look for, is we want to feel loved and accepted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if we're different, it's okay.
Yeah.
We can be loved. We can be accepted.
Absolutely.
And that's what these kids need to hear. That's what we need to hear.
Yeah.
We need to know that even if I fall down, even if I stumble, even if I go back to my addiction that I swore I was going to stay off of,
right,
I can do this.
Right.
I can get back up again, Chad. That's the message, that if I can help my kids feel that, that's the future I'm looking for. Yeah. If I can help them feel that in high school, if I can help them feel that in elementary school, if I can get them and show them, hey, there's people out there that care about you.
Yeah.
There's a path that you can take. Like, That's what I want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And two, mom and dad out there, you're trapped in your addiction. You're not serving yourself. You're not serving your kids. Just from my perspective, I wasn't a great influence on my kids, but guess what? That can change. I know because I did it. And what I used to be and what I used to show my kids are completely opposite on today on what I show my kids, because I've given my kids the opportunity to see somebody who was at the lowest of lows, who was in their addiction, in their struggle, and be able to say enough's enough and make that change. And so now you become the example, because in this life, you're going to fall. At some point, you're going to fall, regardless of what you're doing. You're going to fall at some point. The idea is, what do you do when you fall? And I had fallen so many times and stayed down. But you know what? Eventually, I started working. Eventually, I started doing stuff and putting action steps into changing that mentality. And now I've given my kids the opportunity to say that even though it gets really hard, you still have a choice to make a change. And so if you're out there, you're suffering, get some help, reach out. There's places like AA that are free, that is a community and a family in and of itself that promotes sobriety, that helps you in your recovery. Change is possible, just like Jade said. Change is possible. We have to make that choice, but you can choose it. It might hurt a little bit, but you can choose it. And I promise you, if you do that, you're going to be a positive example in your kid's life, how to overcome hard obstacles and overcome and have a positive outcome. Isn't that what we're trying to do anyways? Be an example. It's not too late to start. It's never too late to start. Unless God takes your last breath, it's never too late. You always have a choice. You always have a chance to do the right thing, to make that small decision that's going to change the trajectory of not just your life, but the lives that are around you as well. Jade, these kids, these parents that don't have drug addiction, don't have alcohol problems, but yet they've got these kids now who are addicted to, unfortunately, something like a fentanyl, to something, pill related, to even, marijuana. How would you educate their parents on, as a parent? Because the kid's going to make a choice, and there's social pressures, and as parents, we become the less popular. And what becomes popular is social media and being popular, or being friends with these other kids. Like, how as a parent can you assist these parents that are in these situations on how to help their kids?
So the two things that I would say on there, Chad, is one is education.
Yeah.
Education is by far being willing to talk to your kids, have that discussion with them, have a real discussion. Watch that video. Watch the video I was telling you about. Watch whatever video you want to see, but talk to them about the dangers of drugs.
Right.
The more we educate one another, that's going to open up a lot of avenue right there. The second thing is love.
Yeah.
Love is the most influential passion out there. Yeah. It's this thing that can lead to change.
Yeah.
That change cannot come unless you find love. Love for yourself, love for God, love for others.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to have that. If you're there and cannot show love to your child because they're having an addiction, and that's beyond your feeling, you need to find that. That's your goal. You've got to find, how can I love my child?
Right.
And then you've got to approach them with love, because without love, nobody's ever going to change.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you touched on that. I think a lot of us parents can probably relate to conditioned love and unconditional love. And there's a difference. Conditioned love is, I love you as long as you're doing A, B, and C. As long as you're crossing this box off, then I can love you. But if you're not doing that, then I'm going to show you negative reinforcement. And negative reinforcement to a kid that's on drugs, I'm just going to tell you from experience,
does not go anywhere.
I mean,
it takes it the opposite way.
Yeah, oil and water. And you're not going to get the results that you want there. But you show someone that you're going to be there regardless. You show them that you love them regardless. Now there's a difference. There is a thing called boundaries, and it's what you're willing to deal with. That's different. But grace, grace is a huge component to helping somebody get help and get recovery. Is love them regardless. And that, as parents, it's a hard thing to do when you see our kids put their hand out and push us away, and they won't let us in. We can't break that barrier. That's tough. But what your job is to be consistent. You don't show consistency, they'll pick up on that. Always try to be there. Always try to love them. Always try to educate them. Whether we like it or not, whether we can hear it or not, education plants a seed. Because you can't run from the truth. We can try to ignore it. We can't run from the truth. And you plant that seed of education, it sticks there. And when I was using as kids or not, it still stuck there. It was still something that was concerning. I didn't get educated as much as I wish I would have, or listened as much as I wish I would have. But still, as a parent, in those situations, education. And like Jade said, go to YouTube. And what was the
Dead on Arrival.
Dead on Arrival. And that's concerning, fentanyl. But with fentanyl, that's obviously one of the biggest killers out there because of the potency. Like Jade said, 7 out of 10 pills is a lethal dose. You get a 6-pack of beer, 4 out of 2 is deadly. That's staggering. That's staggering statistics, what our kids have to face, every day. So educating your kids. And you can't be there and hold their hand the whole entire time, but that's where you have to give it to God. And too, as parents, that's where we have to take the responsibility and educate. What would you like to add to that, Jade?
I think we've said quite a bit on there. Just to take baby steps, one step in front of the other, right? Wherever your stage is in life, whether you're a parent that's helping a child, whether you're that child that's struggling, and you want to overcome, it's one step in front of the other. You're not going to get to the end goal today, right? It's what am I going to do for the next minute? Yeah. Then what am I going to do for the next minute? Then what am I going to do for the next 5 minutes, right? Whatever it is to get you, but baby steps. Mm-hmm. To now, how long have you been sober, Chad?
April 26, 24.
So
that's my last relapse. 23, April 26.
I was going to say, that was only...
Yeah, wow, Chad. We had a little bit of a hiccup, didn't we?
Over 400 days now, right? Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That, you want to get to 400 days? It's baby steps. Yeah. One day at a time.
Absolutely.
You can't do it any other way.
Yeah.
So
that's good point. Good point. Well, guys, it's been another amazing episode here on Rock Bottoms Up. Jade, thank you so much for taking your time.
Appreciate it, Chad. Thank you.
Sharing with us, his valuable experience and education into our schools and what our children are facing right now. We just want to let you know, like he says, I just want to end with hope. There is hope. As long as God puts breath in your lungs and you're still breathing, you can take it upon yourself and make a choice that will change the trajectory of your life. And not just yours. People around you are seeing you. Maybe it's our children. Maybe it's your child. Maybe your child's watching you right now, suffering, watching your child watching you struggle. You can change that. You can find hope. You can find self-esteem. You can find your confidence again. And it starts with a choice. And you can do that. I know, because I'm living proof. I've completely changed the man who I am today. It didn't come easy, and there were a lot of falls. But you know what? I continued to get up because I knew deep down I was important enough to do that for. I knew my children were watching. I knew they were important enough for. And so it all comes down to you. But you know what? You're valuable. You are enough. You are an important part of this world, or you wouldn't be here. You have a role to play. Every person on the face of this planet, billions of people on the face of this planet, you are the only one. That makes you unique. That makes you priceless. So foster that. Realize your value and worth, and realize you have a place here, just like we all do. And you can make a difference, not just in your life, but your children's life and the people around you. I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us here on Rock Bottoms Up.
Thank you all.
You guys have an amazing day. Hey, that was really